Yes, you read the title right. You absolutely have to pay attention to the Washington Wizards going into the next NBA season. Basketball in DC is back. This rebuild for the Wizards is coming along full steam. You know, Will Dawkins, the GM, the owner, Ted Leonsis, and the coaching staff, headed up by Brian Keefe, have done miracles with this organization and with this team from the start of this rebuild, from day one when they came in with the new ownership, the new front office, and everything like that, starting with the Bradley Beal trade, and now look at where the team is today. This Wizards team is really doing their rebuild right. They're giving their young guys plenty of opportunity on the floor. They're making smart moves to put them in a good position going forward with a ton of young, promising talent and a huge amount of financial flexibility in the future. If you're enjoying these videos and you want to see more, remember to like the video and subscribe. It helps me out a ton. You know, it's really encouraging. Lets me know that you want to continue seeing more content like this. Just at the top, I will have to acknowledge that I'm probably going to be a little more positive on the team and some of these players than I otherwise might be if I'm talking about a different team. I am indeed a Wizards fan. I have a Bilal Coulibaly jersey back over there. But unironically, all glaze aside, I think this is a really exciting team, even if you're not a Wizards fan, with tons of potential and one that's going to be pretty entertaining to watch over the next couple of years. Without further ado, though, let's jump right into the rest of the video. The biggest thing I'm seeing when I look at this Wizards team is the type of players that they're bringing in, the type of guys that they're trying to build the team around, the core of players that they have. The three kind of key things that I see with all of these guys is everybody they're bringing in can dribble and handle the ball to at least some extent. You know, maybe not a primary initiator kind of guy, but they can definitely bring the ball up the court, initiate some offense. Just about everyone they're bringing in on the team can shoot or has the potential to like develop a jumper, projects to be a good shooter. And then everybody on this team has good positional size, good length for their position, and they're very switchable defenders. This is kind of the philosophy of all the guys they're bringing in, which I think is fantastic for the way that this team wants to operate and for the way that the NBA league is going as a whole. You know, the whole roster up and down is full of switchable guys, potential ball handlers, guys who can react and read offensively and create their own advantages or capitalize off of other people's advantages, you know, attacking closeouts, things like this. Everybody on the team has that basic skill set, has that basic ability to do all these things. It's what we've seen be super successful with a lot of these teams that have been, you know, championship contenders over the past couple years. Famously, the Celtics, their superpower was having all these different guys on the floor who could do all of these things, who can handle a little bit, who can shoot the ball a little bit, who can initiate and react and play within the flow of the system and having no weak points. And I think that's what these kind of traits that the Wizards guys that they're bringing in all have, right? Is that ability where everyone's, you know, able to contribute. Nobody's a weakness on the floor on either end. Having this versatility and having these guys that can do a little bit of everything on the floor allows you to, you know, kind of gives you tools to implement a lot of different kinds of approaches on both ends of the floor. You know, the versatility of these individual guys, but then also how they mix together, the lineups you can put out with all these different guys with this great size and switchability. You know, it helps to create the system that's forward looking, you know, that prioritizes things that are increasingly important in today's league, when that's switchability on defense, adaptability and reactivity on offense, and depth, right? They have all of these three things with all of these guys that they're bringing in. Throughout the regular season last year and now into Summer League and probably into the next season, they're giving these different younger players who might not be known as ball handlers opportunities to be ball handlers and to initiate the offense, be more involved on that end of the floor before they're actually trying to contend. You know, they want to have this system where everybody has that experience and that ability to handle the ball, which I think is very unique. It's very different from what a lot of other teams are doing. You know, in the NBA, the league has always really been focused on running offense through, you know, designated ball handlers. You know, your point guard running the offense, your star players running the offense with, you know, guys who can finish plays, you know, shooters and guys who can catch lobs and things like that around them. But I think the Wizards are doing something very different where they have everyone on the floor, at least to some extent, being able to start plays, progress plays, you know, make that next pass or whatever, and then finish plays either with a shot or at the rim. And there's so much young talent on this team, all under like 22, 23 years old. And I'm just going to go through one by one some of my favorite players and some of their strengths and weaknesses that I see on this core. Starting with Alex Sarr, this guy has such a high defensive floor, and then he also has a super high ceiling on the offensive end of the ball as well. The athleticism that he has, the length that he has, and his timing defensively already make him one of the best shot blockers in the league. A couple nights ago, from when I'm recording this, he literally just broke the Summer League blocks record. He probably shouldn't be playing in Summer League, but it's good for him to still be, out there on the floor getting reps. He's also super mobile for his size, very switchable. He can switch down and guard out on the perimeter if he's needed to, which gives him that ability to play the 4 or the 5 depending on lineups, which is another thing that I keep stressing is the versatility. He contributes to that as well. Moving on to the offensive side of the ball, he handles the ball super well for someone his size. He's very capable of grabbing a rebound on the defensive end and pushing the break, finding certain push-ahead passes or bringing the ball up the floor himself, which helps in a league that's increasingly focused on pace. In terms of, initiating offense, he has some definite passing talent. He can run a DHO, or he can do these give and go actions that the Wizards like to run a lot, and he can make solid reads, like I said, in transition on the break to, keep plays going, or to be the first, kind of cog in the mechanism of a play. There's also definitely shooting upside with Alex Sarr. Last season, he was really inefficient kind of from everywhere on the floor, but he definitely has a solid shooting form mechanically from what I see from my experience. And he had stretches throughout the season, especially post All-Star break, where he shot the ball really well from outside. I think some more time adjusting to the NBA distance on the 3 and working on his shot will turn him into a solid stretch 5 going forward at the bare minimum. And then when you look at his interior scoring, there's reason to believe that he can really develop into something there, even if it's kind of ugly at points when he's playing this young or this early in his career. There were stretches where it was really, really inefficient. There's some ugly misses, but just the combination of athleticism, ball handling, and length that he has make it hard for me to believe that there's no possibility that he can turn into a really good scorer inside the arc. We've also seen him, throughout the last couple months of the regular season and now in these couple Summer League games, be more of a lob threat, which is, I think, something that can be an easy strength of his, right? Just that length and athleticism, like I keep saying, makes him a beautiful lob target. I think he needs to probably put on a little more mass, develop his strength, fill out his frame. He's not really, doesn't really have an NBA frame yet, but that's, to be expected for a guy that's only 20 years old, 19 years old. Regardless of whether his offense develops like super, super well and he becomes this crazy two-way threat, I think just the floor that he has defensively, being versatile, able to switch out and then guard inside, being such a great shot blocker, being an athlete who can run the break, being a lob target, being a stretch 5, all of these things, all of these qualities make him a high-level starter at bare minimum. I can't project him being, anything worse than like a top, 10 center in the NBA, when a couple years down the line when he's getting towards his prime. And if everything breaks right, I think he's definitely going to be potentially, an all-defensive first-team guy, a borderline all-star kind of guy if the offense really develops. And there's potential. I'm not going to say it, based on some of the great defenders we have in our league right now. He could potentially be in DPOY conversations going forward. That's really the ceiling that I think he has. That's how much I believe in his defense. Moving over to Keyshawn George, another player that I'm really intrigued by and really, really believe in. I think he has a super high ceiling on both ends. While he already, shows some things that make him a high value kind of asset just at his floor even. And to start talking about him, I don't usually love player comparisons, but like Keyshawn George, when I'm watching him play, screams Paul George in so many ways. Just the length and the strength he has, being a physical defender, he has good footwork, good hands on the defensive side of the ball. And then if you look over to the other side, he has, signs of being a lethal 3-point shooter with great range. walking mismatch with his combination of size and strength. All of these things are like, I see Paul George 2.0 in Keyshawn George. He definitely has trouble fouling out in a lot of games. There was a huge consistent problem throughout the regular season, but that is to be expected. He probably fouls a little more than normal, even for a young player who plays super physical defense like he does. But regardless of the foul trouble, his defensive talent is so clear. He has good instincts in the passing lanes, can get deflections, get steals. He has a physicality and like a disruptive presence on the ball. And he has the ability with, his combination of mobility and size to guard pretty much 1 through 5. I've seen him switched on to centers. I've seen him switched on to smaller guards, and I've seen him hold up in all of those different matchups. In my opinion, Keyshawn George will also develop into a really lethal shooter with great range from outside, both off the dribble and off the catch. If you look at his percentages last season, he didn't shoot like insanely well, but he had games and certain stretches of games where he can just absolutely take over and go off, flamethrower from outside. I legitimately believe with all of my heart, no glaze at all, that he could end up being one of the elite shooting wings in the league one day. His mechanics are really good. His balance is really good. He hasn't really shown that he's much of like an off-screen shooter or as like a motion shooter thus far in his career, but he definitely has the tools with that balance and with that, ability to get into his shot to like add that going forward in his career. And again, he's so young that the sky really is the limit for his shooting. I also think with him, there's a little bit of untapped potential as like a off the dribble creator. He has a great handle for, and then his size as well, combined with that, kind of make him a walking mismatch. Like I said before, kind of like Paul George was earlier in his career. And there are glimpses here and there of some like off the dribble mid-range work and, being able to just shoot over guys with his length depending on the matchup. And then certain like signs of him potentially developing into a good passer as well. It's really interesting to me. I think it's hard to say what his ceiling is on that and kind of that aspect of his game. But his just overall offensive game has developed so well from the beginning of his rookie season to now, where if he continues along a similar trajectory in his development, he continues to develop like he has, this guy can really be a high-level player in the league. Regardless of whether he hits his ceiling or not, I think just the skills that he has as a shooter and a defender make him like a very high-level role player at the bare minimum. Looking over to Bub Carrington, another guy that was drafted, I guess, 2 drafts ago at this point. I think this guy has a very high floor. I think at bare minimum, this guy can be like a really solid, like high-level backup point guard. And I think if everything breaks right, he definitely could be a starting point guard going forward. He has a great handle. He has good size for his position. He's, I think, 6'5". He's a plus defender considering, that he was a rookie last season. He can switch, like up 1 through 3, potentially 1 through 4, depending on the 4. He's very capable of distributing the ball. He has a very good, like signature kind of move with that pull-up 3, that pull-up elbow jumper as well. Just the skill set that he has makes him like a pretty solid point guard next to other guys who can also create and score, if he doesn't have to be the number one guy with really high usage. I don't know if I necessarily see him like definitely being a high-level starter. I'm not as crazy on his potential as I am with guys like Keyshawn and Alex Sarr, but his game to me is just one that like fits a solid 6th man or a 7th man kind of role as a backup point guard. And if his three-point shot can become more consistent, if his passing continues to develop, I can definitely see him being a starting piece of an offense where, like I said, he doesn't have to be the full-time initiator. Regardless of his ceiling, I think his floor, in my opinion, is a solid, rotational piece at bare minimum, and there's definitely upside as well. Moving overall to the 6th overall pick from this draft, Trey Johnson. This guy is an exceptional scoring talent. I summer league, small sample size. I've only seen 2 games at the time of recording, and I don't want to draw super definitive conclusions from that, but Like, this guy can flat out score. I've seen him with a crazy downhill game, breaking guys down off the dribble. He's a creative finisher. He has elite decel. I think that's one of the most underrated parts of his game is his ability to decel and get into his floaters or things like that. His float game is very good, to continue off that point. His release off the pull-up in the mid-range is really quick and really clean, and he's a great shooter from outside, off the dribble or off the catch. He's just a really high-level scoring talent at just 19 years old. He looks super mature as a scorer, is the thing that really stands out to me. He doesn't look rushed in these games that he's playing. He's able to find his spots. He can react quickly to coverages. I have no idea what his ceiling is, but if I were to project, I can't imagine this guy not being an all-star at least once in his career. I will eat a shoe live on camera if this guy is not an all-star before he retires, at least once. He wasn't known necessarily as a playmaker in college necessarily, but there have been flashes of him being able to make reads and find certain guys. He believes himself that he can, develop into a really good passer from some of the interviews that I've seen with him. And I just think his ability to make these reads and find guys kind of stems from what makes him special as a scorer, which is his very quick processing skills. Watching him play, it seems like he is able to see and read and react to defensive coverages super quickly, which is something that I think can turn him into an elite passer as well in the future. Defensively, he's not like the craziest player on that end of the floor, but he gives good effort in the couple games that I've seen him play. He has some ability to jump into passing lanes, be a defensive playmaker, be a disruptive guy on that end of the floor, which could be something that develops into the future. But just his offensive game is so high level that even if he never becomes a really high level defender, I wouldn't be too upset about that. Going over to my GOAT, Bilal Coulibaly. This guy, I can't say enough positive about him. If you're a real sicko, a real ball knower, you already know about Bilal Coulibaly, but this guy is a freak. He's an all-defensive talent as it stands right now after his sophomore season. He has freak athleticism, a crazy vertical leap, crazy burst, and he has all of the things necessary to develop a further offensive game from what we've seen so far. This guy can guard 1 through 4, sometimes can switch on to 5s depending on the matchup. He's capable on the ball as a primary defender, off the ball as a team defender. He's a good shot blocker at his position. He can play multiple positions. He can play basically 2 through 4. He has great hands in passing lanes and, getting pokeaways, reach-ins, and stuff like that. He's super athletic. As it stands right now, 20-year-old Bilal Coulibaly is an all-defensive caliber player. This last season, I think if there was an all-defensive third team, he absolutely would have been on it. The only reason that he didn't make an all-defensive team this season, in my opinion, is that the Wizards' defense was terrible. This guy's also a demon in the open floor and on straight-line drives. Just his ability to get downhill and get vertical at the rim is exceptional. I definitely think his handle still needs a lot of work, and he's not a great shooter from the mid-range or from outside, but he's willing to take those shots. He looks comfortable, getting to, those 10 to 15 foot jumpers and things like that. We really just have to see how his development goes. He's going to be 21 years old going into the next season, and I definitely think he can continue to develop that offensive game. Dude is my GOAT. I can't glaze him enough. I own his jersey. I will hear no Bilal Coulibaly slander. The last guy I'm going to talk about individually is Tristan Vukcevic, who is a guy that you probably have never heard of if you're not a Wizards fan, but let me inform you about this guy. He has really interesting upside as an offensive big man. I think this guy actually has 3-level scoring talent and good court vision, like the channel name. But he can make on-target passes when he's used as a hub at the nail or outside the arc. He finds cutters. He can make a lot of tougher passes and lobs passes as well that you don't always see from a big man. He also is an exceptional three-point shooter. Even this early in his career, he shot 38% last season. He has crazy, crazy range. He was going band for band with Wemby in one of those games last season. I remember it was crazy. There's also flashes of him having some talent, as like a face-up scorer or an off-the-dribble scorer inside the arc. This dude is actually just a straight-up bucket when he has the ball in his hands. The main concern, though, that I have for him is on the other end of the floor defensively. He's not like a super mobile defender. He's not an insane vertical athlete. But I think he has good IQ. He's a good communicator. He has decent timing as a rim protector, in drop coverage. At bare minimum, he can be an okay defender. I don't necessarily think he's ever going to be like a really high level defender, but if you surround him with good on ball defenders, and I think the Wizards are going to have plenty of those going forward, I think this guy can definitely make up for it with his offensive game. Other guys down the lineup are also really interesting talents. Will Riley is a talented shooter, has some defensive upside. Cam Whitmore's a bucket getter. Not even mentioning some of these other guys further down the depth chart like Jameer Watkins, so on and so forth. And the last thing I'll say about the Wizards before I stop glazing is just I really love the culture and the direction that this team is going with. The vets that they brought in are high character, really experienced guys like Chris Middleton and CJ McCollum. And just the emphasis that the front office and the coaches all have in all of their communications with the media and all of the behind the scenes stuff that I see, they focus so hard on drafting for character and drafting for mentality. They aim to get guys on the team who are hardworking, unselfish, cooperative kind of guys, which I think is such a breath of fresh air in a league that can often really be like defined by intense egos or toxicity. And I think in order for guys to really develop and reach their full potential, being unselfish, being humble, having that hardworking mentality are the things that separate, guys who are out of the league in a couple years from guys who have very long careers. Everybody has talent that makes it into the NBA, but in order to stay in the NBA, you have to have these right intangible things. And I think that the front office has done a great job of bringing in guys who have those right intangibles. None of that killer mentality bullshit like that. Sorry, Kobe fans, but I think it's very possible to be a good player, to have a good team, to be respected by your teammates without that kind of, mentality stuff. That's all I've got in this one, though. I'm very excited about hoops in Washington, D.C. going forward. I think this team is really going to surprise a lot of people in the upcoming years. And make sure to tune into some Wizards games on League Pass, and you'll be glad that I told you to. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.